At 11 p.m. on the 19th of November 1600, the second son and third child of King James VI and Queen Anna of Scotland was born at Dunfermline Palace. The sickly baby's life hung in the balance, so he was hastily christened Charles. Against all odds, he survived, but this was just the beginning of a struggle with ill health. Leander Delisle suggests he was born with a lingual deformity, possibly tongue-tie. Everything changed on the 24th of March 1603. After languishing in a deep melancholy and refusing to eat or take to her bed, Elizabeth Tudor of England finally died. One visitor in those final days had been her cousin, Sir Robert Carey, who did catch at her last breath to carry it to the rising sun, then in Scotland. As the Tudor age ended and Richmond Palace was sealed off, Carey slipped through the gate and escaped with his momentous news. He rode to James VI of Scotland, who now became James I of England, uniting both crowns. Charles, due to health concerns, would not follow the family south until autumn 1604. One of the enduring myths about Charles I is his health concerns. Historic royal palaces, in their 2020 video marking Charles's execution, gave family background by extolling the virtues and the abilities of Charles's eldest brother Henry. Bright, strong, and sporty. But when it comes to Charles, he's afforded no such positive comparisons, prolonging the narrow view that he was simply sickly, and therefore not up to much. A Cromwellian biography of Charles also claimed that he crawled upon all fours like an animal until the age of 7. But what of the truth? Well, Charles certainly could not walk or talk for his first few years, trapped in a shell within the grand confines of Dunfermline Palace, his gilded cage. He gradually began to move with the help of a staff or stick and the arm of an ancient nurse. But by 5, he was taking part in the state visit of King Christian IV of Denmark, his uncle. During my latest biography of Charles, I found numerous references to an intended career as an officer in the service of Venice. As early as 6 years old, he was approaching the Venetian ambassador with an arquebuse slung over his shoulder, making a confident assertion that he would serve the Maritime Republic. But at the age of 11, his glamorous elder brother died, and Charles became the heir to the thrones of England, Scotland, and Ireland. His first significant act was to lead the nation. That's right, astoundingly, this 11-year-old was chief mourner at his brother's funeral because King James, Queen Anna, and Charles's sister were too grief-stricken to attend. The outpouring of grief in the streets of London that day bear strong resemblances to the funeral of the late Diana, Princess of Wales. Charles, the same age as Prince Harry, had walked behind his brother's coffin as the only member of the royal family present. We know from Prince Harry of the emotional impact this had on him. Forever known as Baby Charles, even at the age of 23, this nickname in itself conveyed so much. All of the siblings following Charles had died young. He was always the baby of the family, reminding him of their demise and his survival. He had clung to life when born, and now his strong brother had died. Charles must have asked himself, what did God have in store? Why had he been saved? A sonnet that I discovered by chance, which Charles wrote his mother sometime between the ages of 13 and 18, I think gives us an insightful and personal view of how his life changed in the aftermath of Henry's death. Charles wrote the lines in order to demonstrate to his mother how a sonnet might be constructed. But the words are extremely poignant. The daily fashery or troubles had, he wrote, quenched the heavenly furious fire that once burned inside him. In place whereof came sad and thorny cares, which restlessly, nor time nor season spares. Vast swathes of people, shocked at Henry's sudden death, wanted stability and a like-for-like exchange. They wanted Charles to be a replacement Henry. Comparisons were brutal and must have been devastating. He took on the dynastical marriage plans that his father had long advocated, namely, that his heir must marry a Catholic to help balance the political and religious scales. Charles's sister had married the leader of the Protestant League, Frederick, Elector Palatine. Unfortunately, James plumped for a match between Charles and the Spanish Infanta. But Spain dangled this carrot for years to the degree that Britain became almost impotent on the world stage, too afraid to lose the prospect than enter the religious wars that were burning throughout Europe. Those wars had seen Charles's sister and brother-in-law flee into exile in Holland. In 1623, Charles had had enough of the continuing will he or won't he. Determined to hold Spain to account and put their interest to the test, he and the Duke of Buckingham travelled incognito to Madrid. This is often portrayed as an immature jolly jape, but it was far from it. Charles's intentions was to marry the Infanta to please his father and, in the terms, secure the restoration of his brother-in-law to his lands, and in effect restore the status of Britain. It was a dangerous act, fraught with risk for Charles and Buckingham. In modern comparisons, it was as if a single Prince William had sneaked out of Britain with the Prime Minister in disguise, with only the King's awareness, and travelled across Europe to marry Putin's daughter. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the marriage never came off. Charles was frustrated by his hosts, and a lot of dubious negotiations did not bear any fruit. But when he returned to Britain, he did so with his Spanish shackles broken. And very soon afterwards, he contracted negotiations for a marriage to Henrietta Maria of France. Charles styled his monarchy on the Spanish model, formal, austere, a divine-like figure. He was a strong advocate of the notion of divine right, as was his father. Charles was so successful with this that much of the time we forget about the man himself, or we simply don't feel close to him personally. That enduring picture of a formal monarch has passed down the centuries. In researching and writing Charles I's private life, I sought to peel back those layers of propaganda, both his own and his enemies, to reveal who he really was. And this book examines that through his relationships. Find out more about the man who was at the epicenter of this fascinating period. Only by understanding Charles I can we fully understand the brutal civil wars that split his kingdoms. One last thing. In the book, you'll find brand new evidence about the identity of the two executioners on the scaffold that cold January day in 1649, when Charles faced his end.